Alright, I'm just going to try something new to explain this image that I made because it's quite complicated. My name is George Mamuzelos. Everything I say is my opinion. And the title of the image is Sam Burke is protected. A judicial inquiry is pointless. The image is about the man in the middle, whose name is Sam Burke. Alright, so the story is that there is a scandal that has broken out that involves the bottom right hand side of this image. And the scandal is at Darwin Waterfront Corporation, where the Deputy CEO Sam Burke, who is married to Country Liberal Party Chief Minister Lia Finocchiaro, has been caught in a scandal that has to do with basically giving himself extra money to do extra work that's called higher duties in conjunction with another person who's on the board working there, whose name is Alastair Shields. And so that's the scandal that's broken out, and it involves these people on the bottom right. And what's going on is that a number of people have started calling for a judicial inquiry which involves the people on the bottom left. Okay, and they think that there's actually a chance that there might be a resolution, or the bad guys will get caught if only the people on the bottom left do an inquiry into the people on the bottom right. But the problem with that is that most people don't know about this entire layer of people at the top of the image and the intersection that happens along this yellow, dirty yellow line through the middle. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the different groupings, the bottom right and the bottom left, and how they intersect with this layer at the top, and then come to the conclusion and say why the idea of a judicial inquiry is ill-conceived and it can't work. Okay, so we'll just start at the top layer, and these are 3 out of 4 of these people are former politicians, parliamentarians in charge of the Northern Territory before the year 2001, and one of them is an assistant police commissioner. Okay, so I'll just start from the left and see where we go. So on the left is a man whose name is Shane Stone, and Shane Stone was the chief minister and the police minister before the year 2001. The man next to him is named Sauce Grant, who is sadly deceased, and he was the assistant police commissioner. Alongside him is a man named Dennis Burke, and Dennis Burke at the time was the Attorney General of the Northern Territory. Later on he became the Chief Minister as well. Okay, so these 3 are connected based on the logical idea that the Attorney General, Dennis Burke, is probably going to propose some new laws or to amend some old laws. He's going to talk about those new laws or changes with the Police Minister and Chief Minister Shane Stone, and then when they've actually come up with the new laws or amended them, they're going to ask people like Sauce Grant, the Assistant Police Commissioner, to lead the police force into actually implementing the laws. Okay? And just as a fast forward, importantly, I just want to point out that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Michael Grant, is the son of the former Assistant Police Commissioner, Sauce Grant. Okay? But now continue on, and in this top layer, the final and probably most important person is named Barry Coulter. Barry Coulter was the Treasurer and the Minister for Railways. Minister for Railways in the Northern Territory was created, according to my understanding, because a railway line was going to be built from Alice Springs to Darwin. It was 1,500 kilometres long or so before the year 2001, and it was a major project, and they created a ministry for it. Okay. Now, there are 2 important arcs that come out of Barry Coulter, which are going to cause a problem later. And the first arc is around something connected to railways, which is the Australasia Railway Corporation. The Australasia Railway Corporation had a board, And upon the board sat Sam Burke. And Sam Burke is the same person who's in the middle of this scandal at Darwin Waterfront. Okay, so Sam Burke is sitting on the board of the Australasia Railway Corporation. And at the same time, according to his letter of resignation, this man at the bottom, Andrew Kirkman, was working for railways. Now, I don't know what his email or his letter of resignation meant when he said he worked for railways. I don't know if he worked directly for Barry Coulter or if he had something to do with the Australasia Railway Corp. I'm not sure, but I know that he's connected to it. And then after that, you have this man on the bottom right, Alastair Shields, who also sat on the board of the Australasia Railway Corporation. Okay, so starting at Barry Coulter, this arc swings in, through the middle and down to the right of the bottom right of this diagram. Okay, most people don't know about the Australasia Railway Corporation. Then, separate to that is another matter which is a scandal in and of itself, which has to do with a $10 million water bottling grant that was given out to a company that was bankrupt. This water bottling company that was bankrupt, upon which Barry Coulter was a director and a major shareholder. And when that money was given out, this $10 million that then disappeared as soon as the company went into administration a few days later, this woman on the bottom right, whose name is Katie Wolf, she's a Mix 104.9 radio host, she was the chair of a charity that was owned by the Broke Water Bottling Company. Okay, so Katie Wolf was the chair for Barry Coulter's Broke Water Bottling Company. And Katie Wolf is connected to the man below her, whose name is Patrick Bellett, because they're married. And using logic, you'd say, well, if they live in the same house, they're probably sharing some of this money that came from this $10 million. Okay? So what this means is you've got these two arcs, the first one being the railway arc, and then the other one being the $10 million water bottling arc that intersect on Barry Coulter. And separately, you've got the standalone, this Darwin Waterfront Corporation bubble or grouping, whatever you want to call it, that everyone's getting upset about. And like I said, that particular corporation had Sam Burke over here sitting on it as the deputy CEO, and he's married to CLP Chief Minister Lia Finocchiaro. Simultaneously, as part of the waterfront scandal, Andrew Kirkman, he has a wife who was given a position on the board that wasn't advertised, and then next to him is Katie Wolf's husband, Patrick Bellett, who was given a plum job for more than $100,000 per year to work 2 days a week on Darwin Waterfront Corporation as the chair. Something about these two being chairs. And then Alastair Shields was also sitting on the Waterfront Corporation as well. Okay, so this whole bubble here is all Darwin Waterfront bubble, that intersects with the railway arc from Barry Coulter, and then the $10 million water bottling arc grant coming off Barry Coulter as well. Barry Coulter is probably closely connected to Dennis Burke because they were government ministers together along with Shane Stone. Okay, so now that we've spoken about that and said, okay, we've got this potential big problem going on here because the waterfront business connects to this layer above. Well, the problem is this. The problem is that in the year 1996, Dennis Burke, the father of Sam Burke, was made Attorney General. And in 1996, today's Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Michael Grant, wasn't the Chief Justice. In fact, he didn't work for the government at all. And he was just a guy working at the local university, the NTU, or Northern Territory University, as a lecturer on tax law. Okay, so he spent his days telling young students how to file tax returns and why, assumedly. But then, when Dennis Burke was made Attorney General in the year 1996, he gave a promotion to Chief Justice Michael Grant so that he went from working at the university as a lecturer to being the director of litigation for the entire Attorney General's department, deciding, which cases were going to be litigated and which ones weren't, as well as how many resources would be assigned and how many wouldn't. And you have to suspect, wait a minute, don't you think that maybe this old group of politicians chose Michael Grant to get that job based on the relationship between these people rather than having any merit? To which I'd say I think that there's grounds to suspect it, because Michael Grant then had this greatly accelerated career path where he went from being a regular lecturer at a university in 1996, then he became the director of litigation under Dennis Burke in 1997, and then within a short number of years he became a Queen's Counsellor, just like Shane Stone was. Immediately upon becoming a Queen's Counsellor, he was made the Solicitor General for the Northern Territory of Australia, so the highest ranking lawyer in the whole Northern Territory. And then shortly after that, in the year 2016, again under a Liberal government, he was then given the job of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, which meant that in 1996, he started out at the age of 33, and he was just a lecturer at the university. And then 10.5 to 11 years later, at age 44, he was all of a sudden the Chief Justice of the entire Supreme Court. And that's where the problem is. And you have to say, if Sam Burke were ever investigated for the bottom right-hand side of this picture to do with the waterfront business, you'd have to say, well, the person conducting a judicial inquiry would be Chief Justice Michael Grant, who's probably going to be loyal to his good buddy Dennis Burke, the father of Sam Burke, because without Dennis Burke, he'd probably still be down at Charles Darwin University marking people's papers. And secondly, if Chief Justice Michael Grant investigated Sam Burke and Lia Finocchiaro, the other thing that would happen is that he would probably start uncovering potential corruption with the Railway Corporation, where this man, Andrew Kirkman, worked under Barry Coulter or on the board, I'm not sure, as did Alastair Shields. And then simultaneously, you'd intersect with the $10 million that went through Patrick Bellett's wife, Mix 104.9 radio host Katie Wolf, to Barry Coulter. And so for these two reasons, railway stuff and then $10 million water bottling stuff, you would have Barry Coulter probably telling his good buddy Dennis Burke, why don't you tell Chief Justice Michael Grant to get lost, because I don't want to get caught with whatever he may or may not have done, theoretically, because of your idiot son being a thief and getting greedy because he wanted an extra $60,000 per year when he's already bloody rich. Okay, so that's the issue. The last thing that I'd like to throw into this whole mess is you have to say, well, it's a pretty big statement to say that a Supreme Court would be corrupt, right? You'd say, well, that can't happen. Judges are good people. They'd never do such a thing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, I have news for you. Like I said at the beginning of this video, my name's George Mamozellos, and I actually went to the courtroom of Stephen Southwood, and I disputed an election that I should have won because the election dispute was quite similar to another election dispute that Clive Palmer, of all people, took to court in the year 2013 to overturn a Senate election in Western Australia. But when I went to the Supreme Court, Stephen Southwood over here, he actually changed the evidence. And the citation for the case is Mamozellos versus Vatskalis and others, 2018 NTSC 57. And from memory, he changed paragraphs 11, 12, 13, 17, 19, and 58. That's what Stephen Southwood changed. And to give you an idea of how corrupt Stephen Southwood is, the evidence that he changed included changing the identities of witnesses in the case, substituting them with completely different people. He rewrote grounds of election dispute, massive fraud, nothing less than massive fraud. He rewrote emails that had been supplied to the court itself by the Northern Territory Civil and Administrative Tribunal, and that had been supplied by the Northern Territory Electoral Commission, okay, which at the moment is under the supervision of CLP Chief Minister Lia Finocchiaro, by the way. But he changed emails, witnesses, rewrote all this stuff, and then he's so corrupt that after changing the evidence, which removed all of the merit that my case had, he then turned around in paragraph 58 and he said, oh, George Mamouzelos brought a case here without merit. Oh, he's a vexatious litigant. Okay, that's how corrupt he is. Afterwards, I actually filed a complaint that went to Chief Justice Michael Grant at the Judicial Commission of the Northern Territory, where Chief Justice Grant sits on the panel deciding which cases are going to be investigated. And instead of referring his good buddy over here, Stephen Southwood, to the police commissioner, Lia Finocchiaro, or whoever was in place before then, instead, he instructed me that I could go back to the Supreme Court to appeal, which would, in my opinion, do nothing but give Stephen Southwood the opportunity to just change the evidence all over again. Because here's the thing, no one trusts Michael Grant because he's corrupt too. These people are both corrupt because you've got this yellow stripe, this intersection that takes place around the former Attorney General, probable relationship with Sauce Grant, Michael Grant's father, and Shane Stone, which makes Michael Grant here, the Chief Justice, nothing but a minion. He's controllable. He gets instructions from people and then passes those instructions to his minion, Stephen Southwood. So that's where the problem is. You can't investigate the waterfront stuff on the bottom right using the judicial system on the bottom left, because most people assume that only the bottom half of this image exists and then operates by itself, without understanding that the top half of this picture exists, and these are the ones really in charge, telling this guy what to do. Therefore, if you want to have an inquiry, there's two logical ways to do it. If you want to use the judiciary, you have to sack Michael Grant, just kick him out, and say, get out of here, on grounds that when people made filings to you, at the Judicial Commission, you gave them the awful instruction of going back to Stephen Southwood. You've brought everyone into ill repute. You're a terrible bloody person. And then you sack Stephen Southwood and refer him to Northern Territory Police, because judges have been referred to police before and prosecuted, with an example from memory being a judge in a southern jurisdiction named Marcus Enfield, who was prosecuted for a perversion of the course of justice because of a $77 speeding ticket. Okay, so if you cleaned out at least these two from the Supreme Court, you could potentially have a public judicial inquiry, supposing that the terms of reference were wide open and allowed it. But better than doing that, if it were me, I would have a parliamentary inquiry or something like that, so that all of these corrupt people here, in my opinion, horribly corrupt, are just cut out altogether. And so what you'd do is you'd give the evidence to an independent politician or something like that. The independent politician could accidentally on purpose lose a USB stick and give it to some journalists, which is the normal way to do it in the Northern Territory. And then what you'd do is you'd have a public parliamentary inquiry instead, so that people in the public like me would be able to ask questions and write articles all day long and direct them at elected politicians like Lia Finocchiaro for the entire duration of the inquiry. Okay, so anyway, that's what I wanted to say about this whole thing. Like I said, everything I've said in this entire video is my opinion. I'm just recalling it as best I can, making a fair comment. I'm speculating. My name is George Mamouzelos, and whoever you are, thanks for watching this video. See you next time, and take it easy.